Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of BacklogBusters, where every other Monday I'm busting out my gaming backlog one video at a time and letting you know if after all these years, these games are worth playing today. In this episode, we're cracking open a good book and diving headfirst into the world of Myst. Why am I playing Myst in 2023? Well, I've gotten a few suggestions from you to play Myst and read the Myst books that I didn't know existed, as well as play the sequel, Riven. But since this appears to be a series with a story, I thought I should start at the beginning with plain old Myst, which is still slightly a confusing prospect with 3 different versions that show up on Steam anytime you search for it. So let's find out if Myst in any of these variations is worth playing, starting with some history. Myst was released on September 24th, 1993 for macOS, then about 6 months later made its way to Windows 3.1 and ended up on more than a dozen different platforms and systems throughout the years. Two brothers, Rand and Robin Miller, founded Cyan, where they released a series of children's adventure games. Then with their 4th game, Myst, they decided to aim for a slightly older audience. At the time of its release, Myst garnered glowing reviews, earning it an 88% on game rankings for its initial version on macOS. And just to give a little context into the time in which it was releasing, Electronic Entertainment called out that Myst sets a new standard for the effective use of the CD-ROM. It also bucked the trend of adventure games at the time by including no enemies, no way to die, and no inventory system. Cyan went on to make a sequel, Riven, which received similar if not higher praise, then took a break from Myst with other studios and publishers involved in the next 2 games, Myst 3 Exile and Myst 4 Revelation, with Cyan instead focusing on a third-person game with real-time graphics and seemingly a troubled online aspect called Uru Ages Beyond Myst, which was released between the 3rd and the 4th mainline Myst games. Then, Cyan returned to the games, with Myst in front of the colon, with Myst 5, End of Ages, with both Miller brothers reuniting for this final game in the series, which features the same first-person perspective, but finally introduced real-time 3D graphics. In addition to all those sequels, Cyan has also remastered and remade the first Myst game several different times, but more on that later. Let's start by looking at Myst Masterpiece Edition, the closest version to the original release that's still easily available today, starting with the things that I liked. Myst starts up with somebody falling through space, maybe time as well, leaving only a book behind. Interacting with that book transports you to what I'm assuming is Myst, or the island of Myst, and I was just immediately struck by the atmosphere in this game. It's eerie with empty buildings that feature strange, almost alien architecture in some cases. Even the landscape of the island doesn't sit right with me, almost feeling like disparate pieces smashed together with wooden cabins, massive mechanical gears, halls of generators, and just a rocket ship scattered around. The island of Myst feels more like a hub that allows you to travel to different ages, which was the most exciting part of this game to me, to explore these entirely different landscapes that all have a drastically different feel to them. And I just hadn't imagined going in that this game, which is basically just a set of JPEGs you're clicking through, would be this effective at establishing a physical space, much less making me inquisitive about the environment and want to explore more. Backing all of this up are the ambient sounds that play throughout the different ages, and a soundtrack that I absolutely loved, which reinforced the eerie, empty, almost hollow feeling I got from most ages, while also sounding climactic when I discovered a solution to a puzzle, and most importantly, didn't wear on me even as I listened to the same songs on repeat while slowly working through puzzle solutions. What impresses me even more about this game is how Cyan actually made it. It was built in this HyperCard engine, which a Wired article from 2002 describes as a stack of cards, and these cards can be linked to each other, just like hypertext links on the web. A built-in plain English programming language, HyperTalk, executes commands, while HyperCard supports pictures, audio, and video, and can be used to make almost anything from games to accounting systems, scientific data tools, and teaching aids. It already blows my mind that a whole game was made on what to me sounds like an advanced version of PowerPoint at the time, but it's even more impressive that this isn't just still images used for a hidden object type game. There are full and detailed animations that play out, interactions that require you not just to click, but pull levers, slide objects around, and more. I just really appreciated how interesting the environment was to look at, how detailed buildings and props were, and the care put into the animations that play out for you. What made it even more impressive was that they even managed to pull this off at all with the technology of the time. But yes, it is just still images and some animations. Sometimes the interactive object stands out a little more because the pixels around the image don't quite line up, and sometimes the animations are a little choppy, which breaks the effect a little bit. But I quickly just got acclimated to this and forgot, and just enjoyed searching and interacting with the ages of Myst as much as any other puzzle adventure game that I've played. Myst also has a much more involved story than I would have expected, as I kind of assumed it would lean more into the puzzle or adventure genre, which might just have you pushing buttons more than piecing a story together. Now, in an effort to not spoil anything, I'm going to try to be very general with my descriptions and not show any puzzle solutions. Upon arriving on the island, you'll find a scrap of paper with some cryptic text, eventually leading you to investigate a series of journals from someone's adventures in this world. So at this point, I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be a lot of reading, some puzzles, and that will be it. Then another wrinkle appears with these prominently placed red and blue books. The books do nothing at first until you return their pages to them, triggering full-motion video sequences of people trying to talk to you. But they're hard to understand with large gaps of static and silence. Later finding other books with windows that look into a whole nother age of Myst, which much like the classic Page Master film allows you to travel there as well. So most of the game revolves around you traveling to these other ages to collect red and blue pages for their respective books so you can hear more complete sentences and hopefully get an explanation of what's going on here. And I was immediately hooked by all of this. I'm not sure if I've ever been this excited to read a written page in a game before. This isn't Skyrim, where I'm quickly flipping through a page to get a skill point or skimming notes until I found the door code that somebody wrote down. Each red and blue or just plain piece of paper you find explains a little bit more of the world and fills in some gaps, but leads to more questions that I just had to get answers to, and it pulled me very quickly through this game. And while this game does have a satisfying ending, it also introduces so many ages and interesting ideas and still leaves some questions about the world overall and these books. Once I finished the story, all I could think was, I'm so glad there are more of these, and I'm very excited to play through the series, so much so that I picked up the whole collection pretty much right after rolling credits on this one. I was kind of shocked when I was writing down my thoughts on this game that the puzzles weren't that high on my list. For the most part though, I picked up on the clues and hints to solve the puzzles in a mostly frictionless way that left me feeling smart and excited to see the next area or next step. I really enjoyed the stone ship age, the mechanical age, and at least a portion of the puzzles in each age, within which you'll be finding a lot of levers to pull, entering glyphs and striking matches, and even playing the piano at some point. Now, brace yourselves, but this is the first game I've ever played where I've actually enjoyed taking notes, because most clues were short and easy to sketch or record, then refer to later. Now, I did take a ton of useless notes up front, and then as I got more of a gut feeling for what might actually be helpful, my notes became a little more streamlined and actually useful. Having my notes beside me as I referred to diagrams and looked over controls as well as doodled possible solutions was a surprisingly fun experience, and for a game that's kind of all about books and journals, it honestly made me feel like a tiny bit more immersed in the game. Also, because this game has no thread or anything that requires quick reaction time, taking notes this way kind of fit the pace of the game. Could I have taken a picture with my phone for most of this? Yeah, and it probably would have been easier to read in a lot of cases. But I'm not sure I've played a puzzle game yet where I didn't get stuck at some point and have to use an in-game hint or look up something in a walkthrough to progress, and Myst is no exception to that, as I struggled quite a bit throughout the game, also because everyone's probably going to approach or at least think about a puzzle a little differently. What I struggled with might not be something that you have issues with at all. My first gripe comes from situations where I knew exactly what the clue was and what the solution was, but could not for the life of me understand how to interact with levers, buttons, or whatever else to enter it and actually just move on. At first, I think I was underestimating this game's ability to let me drag or pull things, so I thought only clicks worked. In other cases, I may have had to click and hold something in a way I never would have thought to try. The lack of feedback and sometimes unexpected results from several interactions just confused me. My other issue is just how lengthy some interactions, animations, and solutions can be to enter or activate. This all really stacks up in a tedious way because your character seemingly doesn't have a single pocket on them. So you can only carry one thing in your hand, so if you pick up a red page, you have to leave the current age and take it back to the red book. Then repeat all the steps and travel back to the age you were just in, and redo any task required to find the blue page, backtrack again to the Island of Myst to put in the blue book. This just felt like a total waste of time, having to redo several puzzles I've already solved twice in a row just to retrieve another page that might have been right next to the one I just took back. My last issue with the puzzles mainly has to do with the limitations of the time. With Myst not being fully 3D, sometimes trying to decrypt these low resolution images where it's hard to judge depth or make out a small detail in the environment is difficult. Several times I thought if I could just walk closer or step to the side to get a better angle, things would have been so much simpler. Also, some puzzles rely on sound clips and voice clips that are not the highest quality, which made it hard to judge what was being said or what I was even hearing.
I hope I pushed the right button.
Subtitles would have made a huge difference for me here. Overall, I mostly enjoyed the puzzles here, and there are more interactive elements than I would have assumed knowing how old this game is, with you operating levers and having to pay attention to the sights, sounds, and context clues, which make these puzzles feel pretty close to what I'd expect in a full 3D, more modern puzzle game. But I think they're held back a bit by the tech of the time and some clues that I just don't see how you're supposed to connect the dots on. Now, with all that in mind, how did I feel about this game overall, and would I recommend Myst Masterpiece Edition as a game that should be on your backlog? Yeah, I think so. If you like puzzle games with exploration set in a really unique world with an interesting story, I think you'll have a lot of fun with this game just like I did. Now, Myst does show its age, and while I think the visuals hold up pretty well, some inconsistent interactions, tedious backtracking will probably cause some friction for you. And if you're anything like me, you'll probably need to look up a few hints or puzzle solutions completely if a puzzle stumps you for too long. The times that this did happen, I was more annoyed than relieved, as I never would have found that solution based on the given clues, but that may just be the way that I approach a certain puzzle and might not happen to literally anybody else. I would have loved to see some type of optional hint system built into the game to alleviate some of these problem areas. Overall though, I really enjoyed the story in this game, and I just wish that the puzzles either provided a smoother difficulty ramp or were more consistent throughout. Oh, there's 2 other entire versions of these games. What about those? Well, Cyan has remade, remixed, and remastered this game several times. This confused me quite a bit, as anytime I considered busting this game off my backlog, searching Myst on Steam brought up 3 different versions. All the footage so far is from Myst Masterpiece Edition. It's technically not the original version, but one that's got improved music, more colors, and more tweaks, but it keeps the original pre-rendered images approach to exploring the world. Then there's realMyst Masterpiece Edition, which features real-time 3D graphics and lets you explore the world freely or move through it by only clicking around like the original. But this version is technically a 2014 remake built on the Unity engine of the original realMyst, which launched in 2000 and is no longer available. Finally, there's a game plainly titled Myst, which was released in 2020 exclusively for Oculus VR headsets, then tweaked yet again and released in 2021 for flat-screen computers, consoles, and phones, as well as expanding to support other VR headsets. So how do these versions stack up to the original Myst, and is there a definitive version that I'd recommend more than the others? As you'll likely see from the Steam reviews, like I did, quite a few people seem to dislike the newer version and imply that they ruined the visuals and feel of the original game. I figured, as I have no nostalgia for the original Myst, I'd probably end up on the newer is better side of the line. And actually, I do think there's something special about the original version. I'm not sure if it's the low resolution of the images that give you like room to fill in the gaps, or that the original feels slightly foggier, slightly darker, and maybe a little more mysterious looking in some areas, while the newer versions seem to be a little cleaner and brighter. I do think the original Myst comes out on top when comparing the look and At-Myst-sphere, with new Myst in a close second, as its added fidelity and extra detail is really nice. In last place is realMyst, which ends up feeling a little too sparse and also too clean by comparison. Now, does any version of the game alleviate my complaints about some puzzles and by extension the interactions? Well, I think a good demonstration of the changes can be shown with the elevators featured in this game. In the original Myst, you'll probably see this elevator first. You push a button, and the elevator closes its door and goes up. Then the second elevator you're likely to find, you pull the lever and the elevator does nothing. Making me think, okay, it's lost power, or something's not connected, or I just can't use it yet. And I leave. But no, this elevator requires that you close the door first, then pull the lever. New Myst has a more consistent language for interactions, with all elevator doors having big handles on them, and the first one you encounter beeps at you if you don't close the door first. Then, when you encounter the second elevator, it should be second nature on how to use all elevators in the game. And yes, this is a tiny thing, and kind of a silly thing, but I got stuck here for at least 30 minutes trying to figure out that second elevator in the original Myst, and it's not even a puzzle. The new Myst just makes tweaks across the board so that interactions and some puzzles are more intuitive, at least for me. Some longtime fans may be mixed on this, but as someone who's coming to these games years later, New Myst let me understand at a glance how I could interact with something, which let me move on to the actual puzzle I need to solve, not get stumped by the interaction itself. realMyst, sadly, I still think is at the bottom, because it changes some things, but it doesn't do a full renovation like New Myst does. New Myst also makes a ton of other quality of life improvements that I really appreciated when running through it after finishing the original. For instance, subtitles that work both for voice and for sounds, which helps a ton if you have trouble hearing or matching pitch. And while I did have a good time taking notes, sometimes you don't want to transcribe an entire paragraph, and New Myst lets you take a photo in-game and pull it up later, which yes, you could do with your phone, but it's still nice to have it all done in-game. New Myst also just has a puzzle randomizer built in, so if you're looking to replay the game, it can change all the solutions so you can re-experience it all over again. And you can play the whole game in VR, which is pretty incredible feeling, even if just to look over familiar lands from a different perspective. So what I'd say is if you've got nostalgia for the original Myst, you should probably just play Myst Masterpiece Edition. And if you've got no nostalgia, I would probably still nudge you towards Myst Masterpiece, if only just to see if you'll appreciate that original version. But if any of the new features in Myst interest you, or the original game just doesn't appeal to you as much, I think New Myst is a great translation of that original game. And while it does lack a bit of the feel and atmosphere from the original game, it just gains so much in making changes and tweaks to let newcomers and returning players experience Myst in a more modern and inviting way. Okay, so now I'm counting 3 games as reviewed in one video, and I'll throw out my normal message that my opinion on these games is not meant to tarnish any fond memory you have of playing them, and if you loved or still love any version of Myst, please tell me why in the comments below. I'd love to hear more about your experiences and talk about the parts that I really liked. But that's it for this episode of BacklogBusters. Have you played any of these versions? What do you think? Are these must-play games that deserve to be on others' backlogs? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to talk more about it. Also, let me know if you have any suggestions for a game I should clear up my backlog next, and I'll work to make a video on it. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button. That helps me a lot. And if you'd like to see more, tap the subscribe button. And if you want to get alerted the second the next video comes out, hit the bell icon. And as always, thank you all so much for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye.